The session today is Israel Tomorrow, Challenges and Opportunities. In many ways, the startup nation is stronger than ever with a thriving economy and robust defense system. Yet, Israel still faces a range of challenges from domestic, political, polarization and social inequality to terrorism and global delegitimization. What challenges and opportunities awaits the Jewish state in the years ahead? With us today, we have Boaz Bismuth, Editor-in-Chief of Israel Hayom, Israel's largest circulation daily. Mr. Bismuth serves as Israel ambassador to the Arab country of Mauritania from 2004 to 2008, and from 1990 to 2004, he served as the Paris correspondent for the Israeli daily Yedioth Ahronoth, where he specialized in war reporting and coverage from inside hostile Arab countries. Mr. Bismuth is a member of French Foreign Press Associations and was part of the President Press and Entrug? Entrug? How do you say it in French? He holds a bachelor's degree in politics science from Bar-Ilan University and a master's degree in international relationship from the Sorbonne University in Paris. In 2004, he graduated with honors from the Center Diplomatic and Strategic Studies, CDS, in Paris. Also with us today, we have Dr. Yoaz Hendel that will be chairing this session. Dr. Yoaz Hendel is the columnist of Yedioth Ahronoth and the chairman of the Institute for Zionist Strategies, and served from 2011 to 2012 as Director of Communications for Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. He is a popular policy analyst with a weekly radio show and a newspaper column in Israel, and has received Israel's most prestigious prizes for his work inside and outside the government. He received his PhD in military history from Tel Aviv University, where he also served as a research fellow at the Jaffe Center for Strategic Studies, as well as the Begin Sadat Center at Bar-Ilan University. Also with us today, we have Guy Rolnik, founder, editor-in-chief of The Marker, deputy publisher of Haaretz, and a professor at the University of Chicago Booth School of Business. For the last 28 years, Guy Rolnik has lived and worked in the intersection of business, finance, regulation, politics, and the media, first as a financial journalist and editor, later as a business entrepreneur and founder of a media company, and in the last decade as a policy entrepreneur, using media as a tool for driving structural reforms in the economy. Rolnik earned a BA in economics from Tel Aviv University, a Coleg Rekanati International MBA from the EMBA program at Northeastern University, Chicago, and Tel Aviv University, and an AMP 165 from the Advanced Management program at Harvard Business School. Previously, Rolnik has taught courses in two leading MBA and entrepreneurship programs in Israel, the entrepreneurship, oh my God, this word, MBA program at Tel Aviv University and the MBA program at IDC College. Also with us today, we have MK Merav Michaeli, member of the Knesset. Merav Michaeli, member of the Knesset at the Zionist Union Party, and has been a member of the Knesset since the 19th Knesset in 1913. She served as the chair of the Zionist Party and the opposition. Did I say something very, very bad? What? Okay. You will tell me later, okay? MK Michaeli has served on the Foreign Affairs and Defense Committee, including a subcommittees and a House Committee. Michaeli activists have extended over many issues and sectors, including socio-economic discourse, gender equality, relationship between states and religion, LGBTQ rights, labor rights, and promoting the peace process. Prior to her election to the Knesset, MK Michaeli was a senior journalist with Haaretz, regularly publishing op-eds and interviews. She also edited and hosts news and entertainment programs on both television and radio. MK Michaeli was involved in establishment of Galgalatz and Radio Tel Aviv radio stations and served as lecturer in the universities and colleges on media and gender. Last but not least, we have with us Professor, President, and Founder of IDC Herzliya, Professor Uriel Reichman. Professor Uriel Reichman served in the paratroopers of Israel Defense Forces from 1960 to 1963, earning the rank of lieutenant. After his brother Gad fell in battle in the Yom Kippur War, he was transferred to a non-combat unit and served as the president of a military land tribunal with the rank of major. Professor Reichman received both LLB and LLM degrees with honors from the Faculty of Law at the Hebrew University of Jerusalem. He earned his doctoral degree in law at the University of Chicago Law School. From 1985 to 1990, he served as the Dean of the Faculty of Law at Tel Aviv University. In 1990, he founded the Ramot Mishpatz Law School, the first private college of its kind in Israel not subsidized by the government, and led it until 1995. In 1994, Professor Reichman founded the Interdisciplinary Center, the IDC, Herzliya, the first non-profit private institution of higher education in Israel. He has served as its president from its establishment to date, with exception of only 1 year, 2006. Please take it from here.
Thank you very much. Thank you all for joining us, and it's a long introduction for a long subject and a long debate in Israel, and I hope that here we will be able to do it in a short way. Israel is a miracle. It's a miracle that exists for 70 years, almost 70 years. It's a Jewish and democratic country. It's a national state and liberal one. It's a state that flourishes while other countries in the Middle East suffer from poverty and other problems. We are not, specifically on this stage, we will not agree on everything, on the way and on the outcomes probably, but we can agree that if you compare the situation of the Jewish people in the Middle East, in the Eretz Israel, 70 years ago to the situation today, we are probably, I will say, and maybe Merav will argue, in our best position ever. Okay, I knew it. But we don't want to speak about the future and even not about the present. We want, about the past and even not about the present. We would like to speak about the future. And since we are a nation of prophets and a nation of people that know how to argue and know how to create debate, strong debates, we will try here to debate about something that we don't know. No one here knows how the future looks like. And we will try to understand or to put the challenges that we see in the current future, in the close future, maybe in 2048, 100 years from the establishment of Israel. Maybe I will start with the challenge that I see day by day in Israel today. And after that we'll move to the speakers here. Israel, as I see it, finds itself in a very limited political situation. Most of the Israelis, and I'm not talking on Merav or maybe other people, most of the Israelis see the Israeli-Palestinian conflict as a very limited way. Most of the Israelis, probably more pragmatic than in the past. Most of the Israelis are not talking about utopic peace agreement, and they are not talking about people, the Palestinians that are not exist. We are coping with realistic and understandable limitations. At the same time, most of the Israelis argue about how we can cope with the fact that we have a conflict, an Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Now, those debates live with us for at least 50 years, maybe more than that. What is new in Israel, I think in the last few years, is the debate on our common narrative, on our common story. The debate on the Israeli institutions. We call it mamlachtiyut. The ability to look at Israel as one state, maybe even a bit a symbolic one, to look at the IDF and to feel proud, to look at the police, at the court, to argue with the court, but still to feel that this is part of our nation. We are not in Poland, we are in Israel, and those judges, those police officers, those IDF officers, they are part of us, they are us actually. And as I see it, the main challenge today is how to find ways to keep this narrative, to keep this unit proud as Israelis that have different institutions, but one story, how to maintain this miracle of Israel, flourish, how to strengthen it for the next few years. And from here, I will ask Guy to start with to wake him up and to start with his own challenge, maybe economically.
Yeah, so I'm going to focus mostly on the economics because this is the subject that I'm experienced and I'm focused on in the past 30 years. Before I start with a few remarks, I just want to comment on what you said about the benchmarks, that we are the best country in the Middle East. I think this is not the right benchmark for Israel. Israel 10 years ago joined the OECD, the club of the developed economies, and this is the only benchmark that we should look at. We are doing okay in some parameters when we look at the OECD. I'll elaborate on it soon, but we are doing pretty bad on other measures. So this is first of all the benchmark. As for miracle, I do agree. Israel, if you look 70 years back, we are a miracle. But I think that we have a new generation in Israel now, and we've seen it vividly in the summer of 2011 in a protest, that are not willing anymore to buy this story of miracle because they have different benchmarks. They don't look at 1948, they look at the present, and they look at other countries, and some of them have other options. So we have to adopt new benchmarks. I know that Israel has already adopted new benchmarks when they judge their own success, and I think the Jewish American people, the Israeli American people should also understand that we need new benchmarks. So I'll start with the positives, and then I move to the negative, then I'll offer a few ideas. So we start with some positive that we take for granted, and many people are not fully aware of it when you look at the economy of Israel. And the first one that, and I'm going to echo what you just said, is that financially speaking, Israel position today is probably one of the best positions that we ever was. GDP, debt to GDP in Israel is now like something like 60%. Which is the lowest one we ever had. Some of you do remember that it was only in 2003, when we were nearing a financial crisis after the second Intifada, that debt to GDP in Israel was nearing 110%, and Israel was on the verge of bankruptcy. So financial position in Israel is great. We have a surplus in our current account, and we have much room now to maneuver when it comes to our fiscal position. Healthcare system in Israel is one of the best and most efficient in the world. This is very important whenever I'm with American audience. This is something to stress, and there are reasons for that, and we should cherish it and understand why Israeli healthcare system is one of the most efficient in the world, much significantly better than the US one. I know that the top of the US healthcare system have much better performance, but this is just the top. When you look at the average and median, Israel is doing much great, both in efficiency and of course in outcomes. I think that we have stopped short of privatizing our healthcare system in Israel like what happened in the US. We see how our healthcare system in the US is taking a huge toll from the middle class, and now we also are responsible for some of the political rift in this country. On the positives, a big plus of Israel is that unlike the United States, Israel was able in the last 10 years to deal with money in politics, with the power of corporations and conglomerates, with concentration on monopolies. In the last year, this discourse has become more and more relevant in the United States. Many economists now and politicians are starting to point out that some of the reasons for the hollowing of the middle class in the US, cost of living and inequality, has to do with growing concentration in the US, growing influence of big money on politics. And this is something that Israel done much better in the last 10 years. We stopped short of going in the direction of the United States because we were able to push a few dramatic reforms that weakened significantly the political clout of the conglomerates, of the monopolies, and of money in politics. So this is the positive story of Israel, which we should be all
Thank
very
you, guys.
proud
Good
of.
enough.
And,
we'll move to.
And
you have something else to say? Okay.
if you want to stick around just with the positives, I can stop, but we do have a lot of challenges.
All right.
So the first challenges, which again, we share it with the United States, is inequality. Israel ranks very high with inequality in the OECD, like US and like countries in South America. We have a huge problem of cost of housing. We haven't handled it, and housing in Israel takes a very big toll from the middle class. Social rifts in Israel have grown very wide in the last 2 or 3 years. I think that we should ask ourselves, is social networks in Israel, namely Facebooks, are actually amplifying those social rifts? This is a discussion that is now taking place in the United States for a good reason, and we should also ask ourselves, what has social networks done to the public discourse in Israel in terms of polarization and echo chamber. As for reforms, my newspaper, both Haaretz and The Marker, we supported Prime Minister Netanyahu for some times when he was pushing significant reforms in Israel. I think that in the last 2 or 3 years, Mr. Netanyahu backed away from those reforms. We saw it in at least 2 major reforms that did not happen and left us with significant monopolies, and I think what we should create again political pressure among the public to restart reforms both in the private sector and the public sector. Thank you.
Thank you, Guy. And Merav, now it's your turn. Will you agree with me that we are very limited in our ability to solve the conflict, or you have other challenges in the next future?
First of all, let me agree with you on Israel being a miracle and a beautiful miracle and a place in which I love to live. And I think plenty of us, even if we live here, still love Israel very, very much. Okay? This is the starting point, just so we're clear.
We will just say that 1 week ago, 2 weeks, Prime Minister Netanyahu called your camp chamutzim. How to translate chamutzim?
Pickles.
Pickles, yeah, okay.
So, your point being?
No, I'm just saying that this is a good explanation to start with.
This goes to the challenge. Thank you for bringing this up, Yoaz. I cannot thank you enough, because you started out with the challenge of the mamlachtiyut, of the common good, the one voice of the statehood, actually, okay? And the reason why this is shattered is because my prime minister calls me a pickle.
I'm not your prime minister.
Not only me, but anyone who does not agree with his policy. And he has been doing it for the past 23 years in various ways, and inciting against those who do not agree with him, including the court, including the police, including institutions that should have been everyone's. So yes, by all means, I know you are not working with him anymore and that you do not subscribe to what he does anymore, so okay. So challenges. First and foremost, I have to say that the cost of living and cost of housing is a problem because, not only because the cost of them, but also because of the wage, the worth of the wages. And the wages in Israel is still too low, while the prices are too high. And in this middle, people fall. Too many people fall in this middle. And this is a huge challenge for Israel, because as I said in the morning, unfortunately, I think many of the people who are here because of the economy stupid, like an American president once said. Yes, the conflict is a challenge, my dear Yoaz. Now, it was never simple. It was always complicated, but where there's a will, there's a way. And there are plenty of ways to go about the conflict. Was it the Arab League Peace Initiative, which was presented to Israel already 15 years ago and was never formally replied by any formal Israeli? Is it some kind of negotiator like the US or Europe or whoever? We have grown addicted to negotiating among ourselves. What is it that we're going to give or not give, and in what way? That's very nice, only it's among ourselves. And it's not with those who we are supposed to negotiate with. So I believe since I believe it's an Israeli interest, and a strong Israeli interest, to find some kind of solution to the conflict which, to a large extent, manages us in the past 50 years, this is why I believe it is a challenge that we should face, and we should already elect a prime minister with a political will to do something about it. The third one, and this is something that we hear a lot since, at least, I think this whole conference is a lot about that, and that is about Israel living up to its mission of being the homeland of the Jewish people, all of the Jewish people, for all kinds of Jews, in Israel, outside of Israel, treating all Jews equally and allowing them to exercise their belief in any way they would like to, and also to allow them to do it in a way that the country recognizes that. And there are many more, but I will only finish with one, with your permission. And that is, yes, definitely gender equality. Because Israel has to realize that it cannot really go on to the future like my friend Tzipi Chotoveli said today, while 50%, actually 52 of course, percent of its population does not have real essential equality on every sphere of life. That goes to being able to integrate the ultra-Orthodox community in every sphere of life, not at the expense of the participation of women, not at the expense of the presence of women in the public sphere. That goes for sexual assault that must be dealt with much more severely and much more seriously. That goes for the work world, the wage gap in the world war. That goes for the worth of the household works and child bringing, which is still not recognized in any economy, and Israel should be the first to find out how to consider it in the economy, so we are not doing work that nobody recognizes what it's worth.
Thank you, Merav. I just would like to ask you one question to summarize your miracle minus 80%, something like that. Where is better to live after all the things that you said?
I
in
only
Israel
lived in
or-
Israel,
no,
so I wouldn't know.
I'm just asking you if economically, religiously, what else from Palestinian-Israeli conflict, where is the best place to live, as you see it?
As I said, I have chosen to only live in Israel, so I really cannot compare. Unfortunately, you have a whole organization here of Israelis who chose to live in America, so you should ask them.
Good answer. Boaz, the most well-dressed editor in Israel.
In the world.
In the world, right. In the world.
Can
I'm
I
sorry.
say
I'm sorry.
A remark before your question. I listened, to my friend, member of Knesset, Merav Michaeli. And if I were her, if I was Merav Michaeli, I would do anything I could in order to make Israelis in America participate in the elections in Israel, because I never saw in Israel so many people clapping.
You're right.
You. This is unbelievable.
Wow.
This is insane.
Merav, you should rethink about your position. Boaz, please.
No, I think it's Boaz who should rethink.
Touché.
So please, if you can pick one challenge that you see as the most dramatic challenge for us, for Israel, today, when you think about the future of our state.
Look, first of all, I'm really glad. I heard you in the introduction. I heard my friend Guy Rolnik. I heard member of Knesset Merav Michaeli today. And honestly, when I hear them speak about so many achievements and so many positive things, unfortunately, I would have loved also to read it in Israeli media a little bit more. This is great. Of course, you've got also things, that we did not achieve, or some things that we have to improve. That is obvious. It's not only in Israel. It's all over the world. But if you ask me about what will happen in the future, all four of us here, how many are we? Five of us with you. We're not prophets, and the only thing I would say is that right now nobody can be a prophet, not only not concerning Israel, but all over the world. There's a book I like a lot. There's a book of an Austrian author, Stefan Zweig, The World of Yesterday. And when he was a kid, when he was in school in Vienna, and Vienna, the glorious days of Vienna, he would never imagine that he would live to see not one world war, but two. And after reading the book, after writing the book, he sent a transcript and got suicide with his wife in South America. We ran away. So I don't want to be now pessimistic. On the contrary, I'm a very optimistic person. And when I see the 70 years we just had, I see the achievement, and I ask myself and I ask you, where have we been 70 years ago? Where have we been 70 years ago? So I think that this is great where we live right now. But it is true also that we live now, it is a changing world. And I would say that the challenges for Israel is how to find our place in this changing world. You spoke about the Middle East before, and Israel and the figures and how we run in the Middle East. And Guy Rolnik said, I don't want to compare myself to the Middle East, I would compare myself to Europe. But look at the neighborhood you are, and this is the neighborhood where you have to handle, where you have to live. And it demands also, some efforts, of course. And look at how the Middle East is changing right now. Look how America is changing right now. Look at the new powers, which are India and China. And we have to find our place, of course. Now, concerning demography, and of course, some of you would think demography, me and the Palestinian people, the Arabs, of course, in the region. No, I think between us, among Jews. demography. People say demography, the future is against us. Figures are playing against us. But this was said all the time. You know, 2 days or 3 days ago, it was 100 years for the Balfour Declaration. You know the figures. You know how many we were, how many Jews were there at the time? And comparison to Arabs? At the time also we were doomed. All the time we were doomed and all the time we progress. All the time we're doomed, all the time, that's it. We're going to fall and we continue to progress. But at the same time, we can't, close our eyes, shut our eyes and see the change in demography among the Jewish population. In 50 years, for example, Merav talked this morning with Tzipi Khotubeli, with the Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs, this big debate, religious debate we have in Israel. And for me, maybe this is an important thing. We have to realize that we have to live in peace, Jews among themselves. I think that in 50 years, every third citizen will be an Orthodox Jew in Israel, and this is a point that we have to take into consideration. Orthodox Jews throughout history did work when Israel was, after the creation of Israel, while the tendency was not to work. That is a point that is really important, but at the same time, when I'm asking my friends at the Orthodox Jews to go out and work and to contribute for the economy and the growth of my country, but at the same time, I will look at my friends on the other side, and at Merav, of course, and I will tell them always to remember that the importance of a Jewish state for my future, for the future of my children, for future generations, because in a changing world, and when I see around me, and all the time people asking, for my legitimacy of being in Israel, I need this religion, and Judaism will be always the best ally for Zionism. So this is my challenge.
Thank you, Boaz. Professor Reichman, your turn.
Well, first, I'm really grateful that you invited me to this panel, since I'm the only one that doesn't have a background in journalism. So that's so I speak a little bit different. First of all, of course, we all agree with your opening remarks. I was born, I have to share a secret. I'm basically a Palestinian. I was born before the State of Israel. In my birth certificate, it's written Palestinia, Eretz Israel, סוגריים. And as such, as a child, I heard about the horrors of the Second World War. I lived through the War of Independence and many other wars ever since. And for me, up to the present day, the most important element in my life and appreciation is this unique story of the Shivat Zion HaModernit, of building a state, coming out of the ruins and having Medinat Israel. And what we have accomplished is unbelievable. It has no parallel in the annals of history. So here we start. Now, with all the achievements, we are facing enormous challenges. The challenges, which I will just mention, I won't go into all of them, but first, we are facing a very difficult war from the north. מצפון תיפתח הרעה. What is happening with Iran and with Hezbollah and so on will create tremendous issues for our forces, whether to preempt or not preempt. It's a horrible dilemma, and probably, unfortunately, we are going to face great difficulties from the north. I won't touch it. The second major issue, as I see it, is issues within, on the verge of economics of our society. One cannot close its eyes before widespread corruption within our system, and also issues of bureaucracy and other issues, and of course, the dangers of the third industrial revolution that may affect us and bring us to great problems in the near future. But we have two major challenges that I would like to mention, one very briefly and the other with a little bit detail. We have a problem with our foreign relations. We are losing support in Europe. We have also issues that students, IDC students are fighting against the BDS and so on, but it's widespreading insofar as criticism. And the most important problem, as I see it right now, is the growing divisions within the Israeli society. So, insofar as foreign relations, I just want to make a brief note. In many cases, we say, doesn't matter what happened around us, it's important what we do. I would like to bring you back to the history of Zionism. When Herzl spoke about the Jewish state that has to be recognized 120 years, exactly 120 years ago, has to be recognized according to the laws of the nation, become a family of the nation, and we have to reach the support for the Jewish state in diplomacy. Many people, made it ridiculous. And then, 20 years later, another person, the first person that was declared by himself the leader of the Jews, Weizmann, brought the Balfour Declaration, which in turn, 30 years later, paved the way for Kaftet November for the Declaration of the United Nations of the State of Israel. And we have to know to conduct our policies, including taking into consideration the internal conflict that we have with the Palestinians. We have an eye on the support of the world. We cannot ignore it. People, and we can and we should use diplomacy, which we do, but also act in a way that will assure our friends, especially in the democratic countries that we share values with, that Israel is a just country, is doing only what is absolutely needed for its defense, and is living up to the morality of Chevrat Mofet, of an exemplary society. So we have to remember it, and not what we do. Of course, in Zionism, it was a combination of Tzionut Medinit and Tzionut Maasit. We have to continue, of course, with what we do, but at the same time, we have to have an open eye and be considerate also to how we reflect abroad. But let me speak about the most important things that worries me the most. The President of Israel came out recently speaking about a country that is divided. He spoke about the 4 tribes. He said there is a major problem because we are actually living with 4 different tribes, with the Haredim, with the ultra-Orthodox, with the Arab community, with the national religious, and with the secular Israelis. He says that this danger, and I agree with him, if it continues, may create a major split within our society. Now, at a glance, you say, it couldn't be too bad, because according to every sociological analysis, you judge a situation in a country if you have a solid majority. And whether that solid majority is based on ethnic and cultural basis, or whether that is based on ideological or governmental system. And those 2 elements show that we are basically okay, because the vast majority of the Jewish population, which are over 70%, almost 80% of the population of Israel, regards themselves as Jewish. And it doesn't matter why and how they regard themselves, they are Jewish. So this is clear. And of course, almost 100%, or almost close to it, of the population regard itself as democratic. And both the Arabs and everybody believes that that's the only way to prevent rifts and so on. But when you go a little bit into it, you see that we are facing a real problem. That's the reason this background that I've described shows us that we have hope. But actually, we are really into a very difficult situation. The Haredi community is separated in many elements. For them, the Jewish state is Medinat Halacha, run by ultra-Orthodox attitude, by religion. Democracy for them is only the rule of the majority. It doesn't intake issues or topics like equality and of freedoms and so on and so forth. And they believe in the rule of the majority when it fits them, in order to prevent an open conflicts. But democracy is much more than that. And they have living by themselves. They have separate cities, separate communities, separate educational system, and so on and so forth. But they don't stop here. What they want to force, they are moving to force their attitudes on the secular people. How to, they want to tell us how to live our Shabbat. We don't tell them how to run the Shabbat in Bnei Brak. They tell us they want to impose the religious ultra-Orthodox law, not only in marriage and divorce, but also in secular issues. There are new laws presented that will allow the rabbinical court to have decisions on all contract law, all property law, everything else, creating two different systems in a country, which is unbearable. Now, from that perspective, I have to tell you, I was among the people who fought the 60s. I was already a reserve paratroop officer in 67. In 67, my unit, we had two divisions of paratroopers. I fought in the Latrun, in other places, but many friends of mine were fighting to conquer Jerusalem and the Wailing Wall. 107 paratroopers were killed in action. I knew many of them personally. They were either my soldiers or my members of my unit. They didn't fight in order to enable another conquest of the Wailing Wall by the Rabbanut. It is impossible. It cannot be explained that it cannot be explained. By the way, in the past, the Wailing Wall, everybody prayed together at the Wailing Wall. Men and women and everybody, whoever felt the need to come close to what, inspired them. But now, a group of rabbis not only says that Reformed Jews are like Christians, and not only do they, make them ashamed, they don't allow them to come next to a corner in the Wailing Wall. Don't allow them to do it. And the government of Israel is not standing up. And I'm telling you, we cannot allow it any longer. Now, let me say furthermore. מה אתה אומר? Okay.
Still have 2 hours.
Well, I know that I'm sitting with journalists that, have to be brief at time.
On the contrary, we're very patient.
Our
flight is tomorrow. It's okay.
Okay. Let me only say the following. With Giyur, with conversion, who gave the right to the Rabbanut to decide who can be a Jew and not? Zionism said, and that's the basis of Israel, that the issue that we are one people, that we are le'om, we are a nation, we are not a religious, merely a religious, as Jabotinsky said, we are not merely a religious community. We said, as Ben-Gurion said, that ha'avar hu kinyanenu en anu kinyan ha'avar. The past is our property, we are not the property of the past. And Herzl wrote that we will have full respect to the rabbis, but they shouldn't intervene in regular life. And I'm saying right now, it is impossible that, let's say, a guy that it happened, that only his father was Jewish, and he is in the shayetet, or in a leading unit, and so on. He cannot become a Jew unless he is going through this ordeal of everything. We lost so many people. We should be open and take it away from the Rabbanut to declare who is a Jew or not.
Professor,
now let me just one more sentence. No, let me only conclude. I have to say there is much more that I want to say. Let me just conclude in one sentence. Israel has no chance to be together unless we go back to the very principle of Zionism. as was written by Herzl, as it was interpreted by Ben-Gurion and by Jabotinsky. That is the solid foundation in which we can bridge the gaps that we have in our society. And if you go and examine the basics of Zionism, you'll find answers today to all the differences. We are in a cultural war in Israel, but we shouldn't give in, and we shouldn't allow the politicians who are ready to sell us to do it, because what is important is to go back to the basics of Zionism in order to assure our future.
Thank you very much, Professor Reichman. Now, after the first part, which was very long, we will try to do it much more shorter and to speak about, I asked you to speak about the future. Most of us actually talked about the past and the current situation. It's happening in every panel. You're right, Merav. You spoke about also about the future. But I would like to ask you now to speak as a prophet about the vision. How you see Israel in 2048, 100 years from the day that Israel was established. And I would like to start with my vision, and I'll try to do it very short in order to help you to do it short also, in a few sentences, to describe how you see the future. And it's very easy to put some utopic dream and to describe something that might not happen in reality. I want to ask you to try to create a realistic prophet. And to start with, or to start and to finish, I will say four things. First of all, Israeli-Palestinian conflict. In my vision, we will see a state minus, as Netanyahu called it, or expand autonomy, as other people called it, in the middle of the territory. The Jordan Valley, the settlement blocks, will be part of Israel. Unfortunately, we will still have operations, military operations from time to time. And the Middle East will be stable and unstable. It depends on the leaders of the Arab population. Economically, unfortunately, I'm saying now, this is how I see things. Economically, I think that we will continue to flourish, since I see the revolution with the ultra-Orthodox community, the silent revolution. They will be part of Israel because they have no other option. They have to pay salaries, they have to buy apartments, they have to be part of something, and it will help to minimize the tribal codes that we have inside Israel. The Arabs will be the Israelization of half of the Arab population will become stronger, since the one government one day will have to force them to do a national service inside Israel, not because we need them to help us to build the state, because we need them to be part of and to be Israeli citizens, like the Arabs that live today in the settlement blocks or in Jordan Valley and will be part of Israel in the future. The monopolies that you spoke on of the ultra-Orthodox and on the Rabbanut will vanish. We see today, day by day, even though that I know it's a very hot subject in the US, we see day by day how small revolutions inside Israel, how kashrut becomes suddenly a subject for other organizations, not only the Rabbanut, how the weddings are not made not only by Rabbanut, but also by other organizations. We see the debate on the Kotel. What you see, I know it's very dramatic debate, but actually what you see is the voices of the past, because there is a new site in the Kotel today, and it will remain there. And I think that this is what we will see in the future. And I hope, and this is the only thing that I cannot put as I said, as pragmatic vision, but as a personal hope, I hope that we will find ways to create leadership that will understand what Ben-Gurion understood in the past, that the most important thing in order to create the state of Israel and to maintain this miracle is to find a way to fight our DNA as Jews, as the Jewish people, our DNA to fight each other. And the two tools that Ben-Gurion found was the education and military service for all. And I hope that we will find a leadership that will understand that and will change the movement that we see today. Now, if Merav would like, Merav Basof, okay. Guy, can you describe your vision for 2048?
Yeah, I don't have an articulated vision for 248, but I do want to comment.
Create something.
Yeah, no. So I do want to comment on the word that we're using all the time, and you used it in your question, which is democracy. So I want to remind us all that liberal democracy across the world, in the West mostly, is under threat, and populism is on the rise. US is probably one of the worst example of this trend. Trust in the democratic institutions across the world, from DC, from Washington to DC to London and Madrid and Tel Aviv, is eroding. And it all has to do, at the end of the day, with the disappointment of many people from the elites, from the betrayal of the elites. Some people call it the betrayal of the liberal elites, but it is a disappointment from the economic system. And people believe, more and more people every day see the last 40 years, whether it's globalization and other trends, as systems, as policies that left a lot of people behind. And we have to confront it. When we keep saying democracy, and but a lot of people feel that it's not a democracy out there, but only systems that, under the disguise of democracies, are serving the few and not the many. Israel is not different in this respect, and I think that United States is not helping on this front in the last few years. Is not serving as a great example.
Guy, allow me to ask you, when he talks about elites, do you think that the elites in the US and the elites in Israel are the same?
Well, of course, they are not the same, because they're different countries and different societies and different fabrics, and they are different. But in the end of the day, the elites are the people with power. It can be people in government, it can be in the academia, it can be in the business sector, it can be in media. So at the end of the day, it's, there are differences between different countries, but at the end of the day, there is growing discontent with the elites. And we have to face it, and we have to understand. So some people would like to, some people are now defending, and I'm one of them, the liberal ideals and the liberal values, but we have to understand that the current policies will not be sustainable. Liberalism will have to change and reinvent himself because people are growing frustration. And as we learned in the last 10 years, probably after the financial crisis and now after Brexit, that changes can be very fast. We are living in a very volatile and risky period. Everybody believes that we can extrapolate from the past to the future and think that we should muddle through. And I think that this is a Panglossian view of the world. Things can change very fast.
So to summarize, you see a different type of liberalism in the world.
Yeah, definitely.
Specifically in Israel.
Not specifically in Israel, across the world. I don't think that
Okay.
Israel would be any different of that, but going back to what we discussed before with the benchmark, I think that Israel and the United States have to look at other models of liberalism, which are much more inclusive. I think that if you look at democracies around the world, in terms of the effectiveness of the public sector and the way that the market economy is organized, you'll see that there are only few countries around the world, namely the Northern European countries, that are actually delivering on the promise of a liberal democracy today.
Okay, thank you. Boaz, can you describe in a few sentences how you see the Israel of 2048?
First of all, I said before, and I won't change my mind again, I wasn't a prophet 10 minutes ago, I can't be a prophet now.
Try
but
to
at
be.
the same time, I totally agree with Guy. I mean, you can't detach Israel from the rest of the world. Guy spoke about economy. I do believe that also the world is changing after, for example, I mean, if we would have looked at the world 20 years ago and, I mean, we wouldn't even imagine this technological revolution we've had and so fast. For example, that new thing you saw yesterday, I mean, the people waiting for the number 10. I think maybe the next revolution maybe will be the car with no driver. This can also change many, many things, impact on many things, and of course Israel as the rest of the world. But I'll take it to another place concerning Israel, and this time not challenges, but you know...
Boaz, we will be a tribes in...
The question I thought you were going to ask me, Israel in 2048, are we going to have the same prime minister? That's what I thought you were going to ask me. I was sure you were going to ask me this question.
You know, even an editor of Israel Hayom doesn't know.
But when I speak about leaders, I see also what's going on all over the world. Guy spoke about populism. We can argue, we can have a debate. Look, I think that what you have seen right now in the last year or two, especially in the last year, elections, for example, in America, what you have seen in France, what you see in Austria, maybe it's a reaction. Maybe people are tired, on the contrary, being treated as if they were little kids, and with elites. You mentioned elites, but it's not only elites. It's also media. It's only intellectuals. I mean, who tell you how you have to behave, how you have to speak, how you have to conduct yourself. And maybe this is also a kind of reaction, because you speak about democracy, all of you, and you always respect democracy. So let's also us respect democracy, because it's very far again. I mean, it's very easy to make the comparison, and here in America, you like to make the comparison with extreme right, with this actual president. In any other countries, I think that that is not the case. I think it's a reaction of what we had in the last decade. In 2048, I don't know, it might change again, because it's all about cycles. But before I give you back the microphone, you asked me to speak a few sentences. There is one thing I have to react. I know that all the audience before was clapping. I know now I'm going to dangerous ground here. We're in America. I know what American Jews think about religion. But I have to react to what you said before, Professor Reichman. Judaism, and I'm sorry, and I will not speak about it anymore. We spoke about it in the morning, but that's an important topic. What can I do? And it's also the past, it's also the future. And you write the future with the ink of the past. You know, it's true, I mean, secular Jews, you spoke about Jabotinsky, about Ben-Gurion, they're all secular, that is true, but they understood also, and also Chaim Nachman Bialik, the importance of Shabbat, the importance of Judaism. Wait. And you mentioned, not me, you mentioned, for example, conversion. You mentioned conversion. You have to understand also, I mean, the other side. The other side is also people who make compromise, but you can't expect them. You can't expect them to change, for example, only for us. And as you can see, I'm not an Orthodox, but to change the halacha because it suits you today. Meaning what? Conversion, for example, is not like me now going to Brooks Brothers and making a suit. This is not Judaism, as you know, and we shall try to find compromise. But before that, I concluded with relations between secular and religious, not with Orthodox. I think, again, after hearing you, I think this is one of our greatest challenge in the 50 years to come. Thank you.
Thank you, Boaz, and Professor Reichman. You may answer Boaz. I see that he wants to answer. And after that, just to describe in a very short way your vision for 2048.
Well, with Boaz, I can have a discussion outside later on. But let me only say, what is going to happen, nobody can predict if it's good or bad. It depends on us, on how willing we are to compromise. I believe that if there will be an openness on the side of the Haredim and of the others, will create something that may be different than today. but we have to understand that there must be a will to live together. So it depends on the ability of compromising. It has to do with our ability to volunteer, to understand that the burden of the existence of the state of Israel is not over. We will still face enormous difficulties. And in order to stand against them, we will need young generation that are ready to volunteer, to take upon themselves not only serving in the army, but also going and building things and going and working to bridge the gap that we have inside and so on. So, yes, there will be changes in the world. We are about to confront an enormous difficulty with losing 50% of the workforce with all the industrial revolution that is going on, technological revolution. But if we stay together and we understand that we have a common past and a great future before us, and we are ready to compromise and cherish the symbols and basic history and culture of the past, but at the same time give it another meaning and move forward and so on, we can have a relative, I don't know what is going to happen in the future, but we are going, as Jewish people, have a great future. So it depends on us and our willpower and our commitment.
Thank you very much. Merav, you know what, I insist that you will put a vision. Herzl had the ability to describe the future. I know that it's very easy to speak about the challenges today, but I would like to ask you to speak about your vision, how you see Israel in the future. And you know, I have every morning, this is the reason that I came here, I'm preparing 4 sandwiches for school in my place for my kids. Maybe you can start with the family, how the family will look like in 2048. We will see any changes?
Are you ready?
The family?
Of course we will. Because the family is already changing. For a long time is already changing. But what must happen is that the state, governments need to recognize this change and to enable it, to adjust the law, to adjust the economy to the changes in family, and to allow even more options for more kinds of families. This is something that will happen. Definitely. And it will only make more people more happy.
So in 2048, the state of Israel will be much more liberal than today, as you see it.
This is something that I completely agree on with Professor Reichman. It's up to us. Now, I have to tell you something. I agree with your description of the ultra-Orthodox community. That is, it's true that they are, first of all, they grew huge. The ultra-Orthodox community today is very, very big. And what happens is that they are integrating in the general society. They are studying higher education more than ever. They are working in whatever places. And what happens is that the rabbis cannot keep them closed in the ghetto the way they used to in the past. That is why what they're trying to do now is to export the ghetto to the public sphere. So we have separation in higher education, so we have separation in workplaces where women or ultra-Orthodox women, so we have separation in the army. Every place in which the ultra-Orthodox are going out to, and they are going out to because they want to go there, not because they want to stay separated, if men and women, but the rabbis and ultra-Orthodox politicians and coward secular politicians allow them to chase them into the public sphere of Israel. And that is something that we could not allow. So we can completely, and I totally agree with you, we can see in 2048 a state of Israel in which the ultra-Orthodox are integrated. The Arab society in Israel, which I agree with you completely, is growing, is today a secular, modern, educated community. The rate of birth among Arab society in Israel dropped, and it's same
You
average
will
as the
vote
Jewish
for
one.
a national service by law
Do you know,
for Arabs?
it's not, first and foremost, I want to tell you something. I don't know if you know that, but there is, Arab citizens are waiting, there's a waiting list to serve a civil service for Arabs because there are not enough spaces that the
No, I know, I
state
just asked
allocates.
as
So they're
policy.
already doing it. This is something that is a deeper discussion. Do we want to maintain the mandatory draft? Do we want to, in what terms do you want to allow to replace the mandatory draft with civil service? It's not such a, shallow discussion. But what I'm saying is, and that
A
is
good
the
answer
important
for
thing.
politician.
What I want, it's a genuine answer, Not every politician has to
Say
speak
yes
only
or
in,
no.
in slogans all the time.
Yeah, but this is the
no.
sandwiches and the national service.
The sandwiches. I will inspect your sandwiches soon. No, but what I want to say about
Kosher sandwiches.
the integration,
Boaz, this is your responsibility.
the integration of the Arab society is completely, or not actually completely, they are also slowly but surely integrating more and more into the general society despite the government's effort. Not only doesn't the government help them, but they're doing it despite. And we could profit from it so much more than we do today. So it's, once again, up to us. But let me tell you my other vision for 2048 in Israel. We have an egalitarian maternity and paternity leave, altogether a year in which the mother and the father split between themselves. We have free education from the end of the parenthood leave, that is from the age of 1, or if the parents go back to work before that. We have childcare for free for everyone from the minute the parents go back to work. We have a network of what we call tipot chalav, who give extended support for parents and that see them through from the phase of pregnancy throughout the early childhood, and helps them get over the crises of parenthood and the difficulties and the hardships. And you grow a much healthier and a much stronger society. You help families, you support them. You have a shorter week of work, less hours of work. You have more welfare because that also helps how do you say pirion, Guy? Productivity, thank you. That with a much, much better education than we have now for everyone. So we have, yet again, a much higher productivity. And we are dealing with sexual assault, with bullying in the workplace, and we're not inciting against anyone in Israeli society, not from the government, especially, I would say that, especially the government does not incite against anyone in Israeli society.
Just to understand, who is going to pay everything? You.
Look at you guys. Look at you. You are agreeing immediately. This is, Guy rightfully talked about the failure of liberal democracy to make everyone partners of not only democracy, but of the economy and of the profits that we all are partners to creating. This is what should happen. And when Guy rightfully says that the only places in which liberal democracy still delivers are the Northern European countries, this is because they pay for much, much more than what you are used to getting for your governments. It is completely possible. Once again, it's a matter of political will. And we should have in the government this kind of political will.
Thank you, Merav. One sentence to summarize this panel. Guy, one last sentence if you have. You don't have to. Boaz?
No, I don't. First of all, very interesting. Thanks a lot. I think we were very realistic, very pragmatic. I would only say that again, I mean, for 1 hour and a half, we spoke, for 1 hour and a half, I mean, I think it was, we spoke about so many issues. You have seen what percentage, I mean, we gave to the two-state solution, we gave to the Palestinians, we gave to the linkage between we and solution with our neighbors, which proves maybe that we have understood a few things in life. We don't have to make this linkage again. And maybe one important thing, and I think Professor Reichman said it before, there was a great, I started with mentioning a book, I'll mention another one. There's a professor that you probably appreciate, I hope, or maybe not, you know, Dan Shiftan. And you wrote this amazing book, Korach Hafrada, The Necessity of Separation. And the first sentence, I mean, he wrote in this book concerning, because we didn't mention, I mean, the territories, of, for me, it's Judea and Samaria, of course. And he said that it's about time that Israeli governments should decide whether to absorb or to vomit. Of course, I hope that in 2048 we shall absorb. Thank you very much.
Professor Reichman.
Insofar as a solution, I agree with you. There will be a state minus for the Palestinians, and we will have a situation that they will have much more freedom, but we will be able to keep our security, and perhaps from time to time we'll have to have some kind of, you know, not wars, but some operations. But that's a maximum, I believe, that's a maximum which I believe that we can get in the near future. I really believe that we'll see a real integration of the Arab population, of the majority, the vast majority of the Arab population within the Israeli society, according to the vision of Herzl, if you know. I believe that Israel will become a place of greater unity if we behave in the right way, bring things together with a tremendous commitment towards those who have not, because that is in our tradition, and that is what we have to do, because that is really the upper moral test of a society, that we deal with the weak, deal with those who cannot help themselves. And finally, I believe that Israel will not only survive, but will be a great country with unity and togetherness into the future.
Thank you very much, and it's a good point to finish with. I would like to thank you all for participating in this panel, and I would like to thank you all for coming.
Thank you, Yoaz.
Thank you. And we started with the Israel as a miracle, and you know, miracle needs two elements. One of them is true believers, and the second part is true pragmatic people that know how to operate things. And at least I'm happy that with all the gaps between us, we are positive about the two elements, and we have enough things to argue until 2048. Thank you very much. Im tirtzu, en zo agada.